but in some form or other, it is there. For faith in a power greater than ourselves and a miraculous demonstrations of that power in human lives are facts as old as man it's himself. We finally saw that faith in some kind of God was a part of our makeup, just as much as the feeling that we have for a friend. Sometimes we had to search fearlessly, but he was there. He was at as much a fact as we were. We found the great reality deep down within us, and then in the last analysis, it is only there that ugh, um, that he may be found. It was also so with us. This is the part I was really getting to. We can only clear the ground a little bit if our testimony helps sweep away prejudice, enables you to think honestly, encourages you to search diligently within yourself. Then, if you wish, you can join us on the broad highway. And with this attitude, you cannot fail. The consciousness of your belief is sure to come to you. So I guess I wanted to center what I talk about around these three ideas of the sweeping away prejudice, the ability to think honestly, and the encouragement, the ability to search diligently. And I can say search diligently within myself, but I've kind of needed some outside, supporting that as well. How long do I have? I want to keep track of time. Okay, somebody give me like a 5-minute warning, will you?
Yes.
Warning.
I got it.
Something like that. Okay, great, thank you. So as I mentioned, my current birth date is May 5th in 2003, and I got sober in 1988. And I'm gonna kind of keep the backstory a little bit on the shorter side, but some important things happened. In my situation, there was a lot of pain and misery early on. I struggled a lot. Like our home was not a peaceful place. And in my experience, I had very few peaceful places in my life as a child. I'd say the place that was the most peaceful was the library. So if you know any librarians, always give them a little shout out. For me, I just didn't feel like I had a lot of havens. And I don't think that that's like made me who I am or something, but it was important in the context of what it means to have a sense of belonging. And I didn't really experience a sense of belonging until later in life. I think early on, as part of survival mode or personality or whatever, that obsessive compulsive nature was there very early, way before drugs and alcohol came around. And if I was a psychiatrist or psychologist, I might say that I was seeking for control wherever I could get it or something. I think for myself, I just needed to. Those were things that I could manage, and I managed them to the best of my ability. And so, yeah, stealing and lying and making up stories, all kinds of stuff. I had a lot of different obsessive compulsive nature abound. And then when I started, when I found alcohol, and then really when I found drugs, which was like right around the time I found alcohol. In fact, I think I probably started using drugs slightly before I started drinking because I wasn't old enough to have alcohol really. I started using when I was about 12, maybe 13, beginning of 13, 7th grade. And that's when I felt a sense of belonging for the first time, was when I made my first friend who also, had access to some substances. And for me, so drugs is a very big part of my story. In the situations that my drug use, the circumstances that I ended up in my life were a little bit challenging. They did center quite a bit around drug use. So for me, I was trafficked. I was a teenage runaway early on, and then I was trafficked. So if you don't know what that means, I was caught up in the life for a short time. Somebody recognized that I was good prey. So that's how I talk about it. And so there was some really, horrible things that happened, and I'm really grateful that I got to live through those things. And regularly on my birthday, I tend to have an extra little bit of gratitude around those. So here I had managed to survive some really tough situations, and then I got put into foster care, which was a really good thing in some ways because it took me out of this particularly dangerous environment, but it wasn't quite really a supportive environment either. And that's really when a different level of substance use really took off and more access to alcohol. And so I like to talk about the years of when I wasn't in active recovery as sort of like chapters. And I'm not going to like go into every chapter, but for me, it's important, like how I think about my years out of recovery had certain chapters, just as my years in recovery have had chapters. And so in this next chapter, I'm feeling really isolated because I got a lot of big trauma that has no like way to get processed. There's no environment. There's no opportunity to work through those things. So drugs and alcohol became an even bigger source of support for me. And when I was 17, and I guess I was 16, and I knew like I really knew like something needed to change. I knew for a long time that that I was an alcoholic. I had a disease. I knew that for a very long time in my life, as I mentioned before. But I couldn't like push out of that. I just still had this like sense of like despair, like this ongoing sense of despair that there just wasn't going to be. I had no like vision for where my life could be. I knew I wanted something different, but I could not even imagine what that could be. And and then when I was right before my 17th birthday, um, I happened to be in the presence of someone who had was really struggling with mental illness in themselves, and ended up with a firearm, and and had died in front of me. So that really became a really important moment because it wasn't just having watched someone pass. It was the fact that I knew this person, and I knew the larger essence of this person. I knew how much this person really did want to live, but that they could not get out of the throes. And I related to that. And so when Brandon died, it really became this catapult for me to try to get some sort of help. And so I was in foster care, and we were homeless. So there's a whole story around that too. But and when we finally got a place to stay, I was there probably 2 weeks, and then I grabbed a couple items, and then I came back to Seattle, and I came to the Orion Center, which had saved my life when I was a kid. And through those guys, they helped me. They find me some temporary housing, and then they got me into treatment into Ryther. And that was like when things really had an opportunity, a chance for hope. So again, I did a shout out to the libraries. I'm gonna do a shout out to all the youth care centers, to all the places that support our youth. We need to support our youth. We need to support everybody, but those, in my opinion, those youth organizations, got to invest in them because they do save lives. So that was a really big deal. That was the first time I really had a sense of hope. And I had some great experiences. In that time, I ended up, it's kind of funny, not funny, I ended up pregnant in treatment. So that's another story too. Is this getting weird? So in my first year sober, I was pregnant, and I I was in recovery my first year, and I was pregnant the whole time. I was pregnant in the rooms at 17, going to high school. And, so everybody in the rooms became my aunt and my uncle, because I didn't really have family at the time. And so it was really pretty cool to the way that the program really supported me and wrapped around me. And so I've gotten to, directly experience the love and the care and support that we offer each other, and I'm grateful for that, because there's no way I could have made it. There's no way that that I could have had the life that I ended up having. Unfortunately, I had to give my child up for adoption because my circumstances weren't going to allow me to offer her a fighting chance. So, and I walked through that sober as well. I gave up my daughter for adoption in recovery, and again, still really wrapped around with support. And again, another example that we can go through difficult times and support each other too. I don't always talk about those. In fact, those two things that I talked about, I rarely talked about in the majority of my life, because it was like a closed topic. But being in recovery has invited me to try to be more open and to share my experience, strength, and hope, because I've also seen that other people, sometimes like myself, are holding things, suffering in silence, I guess you could say. So one of the things that I've really appreciated about recovery over the years is that we do get to watch each other walk through. We get to go through the joys and the struggles together. And so that was a really good example for me about what recovery meant. I couldn't really understand the spiritual concepts, but I did get to see people walk through, difficult times and through joyous times. And those also gave me a lot of encouragement that my life could be something bigger than it was. So, I did not stay sober the whole time. I stayed sober for about 3 years, and then my own biochemical mental health. I was struggling a lot, and even though I was sober and I was in the rooms, and I sort of had a sponsor, but not really a sponsor. I wasn't doing any step work, but I was plugged in. I did have a good sense of community, but in the end, I could not keep it together. And so I went back to treatment to Cedar Hills. I also want to do another plug for libraries, youth programs, and then also community-based programs that support people in recovery, because we need those programs. And Cedar Hills, I spent 6 months there, and I had people like Todd show up and come and see me, who's now my husband. That was 1991. So, the reason I'm going into a lot of this detail is that sometimes, for myself, I just couldn't, if you want to look at my life and say, oh, it just didn't work out. She went to treatment and then it was a failure, or something, it's for me, there's something about the culmination, at least in my story. There were people, I had supports all along the way, from the librarian to the youth, and then all these other people that came in at different times, and that ultimately, warmed the soil and provided the support to ultimately where I was able to get some traction, and be able to build a life of recovery. And I'm really grateful for that. And so it's that reminder that we don't give up on each other, and every day is a day one. And I know people in recovery that they could never get like Pat Murphy back in Denver could never put together more than, I don't know, maybe 30 days for maybe 20 years. And in the end, he died, in the end, it died of an overdose. But he was there all the time, and he was a part of our home group. And he was such an important part of our family, and we just don't give up on each other, and that we can always provide support there, and that we've all got something to offer. So so I couldn't quite keep it together, but I ended up I started doing the whole geographic. So like many people, I'm like textbook, all the different ways I try to manage my drugs and alcohol, the same as everybody else. Change the places, I changed the people. I went with people. I was in relationships with people that drank less than I, or more than I. All that kind of stuff. I changed substances. There was a lot of, harm reduction was big, but geographicals was also big. I moved to Mexico and got to do archaeology for a while, which I messed up because I was, alcoholic and out of control, right? And then I moved to Germany for another, opportunity, and also could not keep it together. I became the kind of drunk that I would fight. I was a scrapper, I thought, but really what would happen is I would just wake up with black eyes and or embarrassing stories that seem to live for like 20 years. That people are apparently still talking about in other cities. So, but the biggest thing is I just was in a sense of despair. So when I came back at the age of 32, I think it was, I felt beat. And I felt in that situation where I was going to die because of the substances that I was using, and yet I could not stop. But I knew where to go. I'd already been in the room, so I knew that there was a place for me. And like somebody else talked about earlier, I was mad, and I called the hotline. I like to tell the story. I called the hotline, and the person on the hotline said, "Oh, I'm so glad you called, because you're just keeping me sober today. And, thank you." They're just thanking me. And I got so pissed. I told them to bleep, and then I hung up. I was just so mad. It's like, how dare you take advantage of this is like what I said, right? This is in my head. I'm like, how dare you take advantage of my despair for your own gain, I mean, right? Because I didn't have the understanding yet about the difference between humility and humiliation, right? And I was looking for that. I was looking for that those reasons about why I didn't fit in, right? So I was looking, had all that prejudice, like I was, trying to sweep away later. And so, and it's funny because I had done lots of different kinds of service in my life, in a variety of topics, even when I was, not in recovery. But I still never really grasped that key thing around what it means to be of service, that when you're really truly giving selflessly, right? And so when here I was presented with someone who was really trying to be of service in a selfless way, but I got all caught up, I got all caught up in my own sense of shame and my own like fears and my own contempt prior to investigation, which I think is a cool expression. So and so it took me a little while to come back. But when I did, Lori Murphy picked me up in Denver, and she decided that she was going to be my sponsor, and I didn't like her. And she made me do a whole lot of stuff that I didn't like. And I have very similar stories of like I was told to call 3 people a day, and I hated every minute of it. And I would call them, and then they would hang up. I would hang up, and then I would mumble about, like, yeah, I was supposed to call you. And then they would call me back, and I wouldn't answer the phone, and and so now whenever I fill out the little thing, when I put my phone number down, I say text is fine too. I don't care. You can text me if you're not ready to talk. I don't care. Because some of us just need a little bit more flexibility. And I sat with people in meetings who just let me be how I was. I needed to be around people that recognized I was fragile. I was just fragile, and I needed to be with people that could just let me be how I was. And so I actually I did a lot of recovery in Narcotics Anonymous. And in fact, the majority of my recovery has been in Narcotics Anonymous. And I was fortunate to be in recovery that did not focus on specific substances. It was a lot of those folks had, history with AA. They were coming from AA, and then, they started Narcotics Anonymous meetings. So I was really fortunate to have a strong sense of recovery in the right kinds of messages and the right focuses, so that when I moved back to Seattle, it was a very easy transition for me to come to, and become part of the Alcoholics Anonymous community. I struggled a lot in sobriety too. There's this reading that I love, and anybody that spends time with me hears me talk about it. It's the reading Emotional Next Frontier Emotional Sobriety by Bill W. If you haven't read it, Next Frontier Emotional Sobriety by Bill Wilson Grapevine. It's online, and it says. So it talks about since AA began, I've taken immense wallops in all these areas. I've taken immense wallops because of my failure to grow up emotionally and spiritually. Oh my God, how painful it is to keep demanding the impossible, and how very painful to discover finally that all along we have had the cart before the horse. Then, and then I'm saying how to. So. Even then, as we hew away, peace and joy may still elude us. That's the place that so many of us AA oldsters have come to. It's a hell of a spot, literally. How shall our unconscious, from which so many of our fears, compulsions, and phony aspirations still stream, be brought into line with what we actually believe, know, and want? How to convince our dumb, raging, and hidden Mr. Hyde becomes our main task. And so I like that reading, because even though I started to really get connected in recovery and did step work and had a connection, I still struggled with that in recovery. I still had times in recovery that I still felt a sense of despair. I still felt a sense of disconnection. I had a period of time when I did the steps, and it was just like, box checked. I did not feel that spiritual connection. I'm, for a variety of reasons, I'm wired to do and not, and yet struggle to be really present. And so that was my experience with the step work. So I did not have all the benefits, that we talk about, like in the 9 Step Promises. I just didn't have those yet. And so what really became important is around year 8, I had a few different things happen. One was a divorce and a miscarriage. And then, unfortunately, I lost an opportunity for to get my PhD, which, it's sort of like all 3 things that kind of mattered to me were gone, right? And in like 2 months, and my husband was having an affair. So all of these things happened, and I turned 40. They all happened like in like a month, But it was really important, because it also, again, became a springboard for a new kind of recovery became available to me. And what happened was, for the first time, I think I had my 9th year, and I really committed to having a different experience with the steps and with my life, period. Then it was around, I guess I had about my 10th year, and I had my first real third step experience. I had my first real moment of where I really gave my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood it. And I tell you, everything changed. And it's not like it was a reward. Are we doing okay on time? Because I feel like I'm babbling. Are we good?
Oh, yes. You have 2 minutes till 5 minutes.
Perfect. Okay.
I mean, you have 7 minutes.
No, I like how you think. This is good. Yeah, this is good. Thank you. I like that. Now I've only got 1 minute before 5 minutes, right?
Exactly.
Or like 49 seconds. Okay. But that became a springboard, right? And so I started to have a whole new, it's literally what Steve talks a lot about the value of the set aside prayer. I made that, and I feel emotional about that too. I made that decision to set aside everything I think I know about my life, about my relationship to God, and how I could be in this world. And man, I tell you, that just changed everything. And I like to tell people that it took me a while, to get my third step. And, everybody can have their opinion. But it made a big difference for me to have my own experience, and to have my own ritual around what that looked like. And I don't think that the things that I have, this richness that I have now, is a result of like a reward of that change. But boy, it's sure a byproduct. Um, in that process, I have such a rich life today. When we listen, when we hear the ninth step promises, there's so much that has come true for me. And I I have a life that feels meaningful today in ways. I mean, it's not like everything was just, garbage before, but it's different. It's a different kind of richness that I couldn't have imagined that I could have. And I have a level of love in my life today that I never imagined that I could have. I fell in love and with someone who had been a friend of my early recovery days, was part of my original tribe, and I came back to Seattle and married this person. And so there's a whole story around that. Part two. No, kidding. But just that, what it looks like to fall in love with somebody who shares the same values. Like that's deep. Like I never knew that could be a thing. Like to marry somebody, or to just be in union. To be in union with somebody who your values are really aligned and you have fun with. I mean, that is beautiful. To be with somebody that has a sense of God in their life, and supports your sense of God. I mean, that's just such and to be able to offer that, that's such a gift. My level of service has changed. I've always been a person that likes to volunteer and do things, and yeah, I got a lot. But now my level of service has changed. The kinds of service have changed and branched out into different kinds of ways. I'm actually a chaplain, which is really interesting, especially if you know me. But I would never imagine that I would become a chaplain. And what a gift that is to be in a place, to be with people in their most, in the moments of deep suffering, and to also be with the person who has died, the person that has passed, and be able to hold a spiritual space for those that have passed and those that are still living, and everybody that's there, including first responders, including neighbors, whoever is there on site. And it's something that I really take seriously. That's a way of service that I would have never foreseen. And then there's like all the fun stuff too, right? Like I play gongs, like I got in this whole spiritual and experimental, weird, cool, musical, and and can be therapeutic too, but is also just really fun stuff to do. I took up dirt bike riding at like 42. I'm not very good at it, but I mean, you just never know, right? So it kind of goes back to that, setting aside what I think I know, and that's to me the big take home is like, what is it meant to just kind of try to sweep aside the prejudice and really be open to possibility. And have I still struggled? Yeah. And I mean, there's been times that have been really hard. I've and life is not going to always be easy. Our health change. We lose people that we love. There's still things that those of us that have lived longer than we would have expected to, things are going to happen, right? Life happens, but I have opportunity. I have I don't know. I don't like to say the tools, but I have the capacity to show up in those situations with grace if I'm open to it. So my big thing now is like I'm really on this bigger spiritual process, right? I don't know what else to call it. So my spirituality also has chapters, just as my, times before recovery and during recovery. And the spiritual aspect, I've been really grateful that AA has no monopoly, always says, seek to learn, and so, learn from others. And for me, AA is not my exclusive home. But I tell you what, AA is a big part of that. And there's no way that I could have the other communities that I have without AA. And I'm really grateful, and this is a home for me. I think I'd like to close with the 9-step promises. Is that all right?
Mm-hmm.
I think I've just talked enough. Write that down, Todd.
It's on tape.
Stephanie says, I think she's. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we are halfway through. We're going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the door. Oops. Okay, I'll start over. We're going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations that used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They're being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly and sometimes slowly. But they will always materialize if we work for them. So the last thing I would just say too is I've appreciated that I have my own concept of God, and God is just a word. But I'm really grateful that I have a sense of connection, spiritual connection that works for me in my own language. That's also one of the reasons why I love the gong, because it can be such a spiritual tool that doesn't require a name or a language. And that's why I like to use it with people, especially in recovery, or that are, trying to find connection to spirituality in their own ways. And I needed to have that ability, because if I'm just like holding someone's hand, like repeating, something that somebody else says for a third step, I'm not connecting. For me, I needed to be able to have a seeking process. And in that, I found a relationship, and I built that relationship over time. And I'm grateful for that. And if anybody wants to talk about that, they can reach out to me. Thank you for letting me be with you today. And thank you for sharing your time. It matters when we see each other. It's important that we see each other, whether it's in person or online. Or, even if we can't literally see each other, but we can hear each other or feel each other. Our presence is important. Your presence is important. Thank you.
Thank you.